All right, today we are talking about the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, and how those transits affected our marriage, helped our relationship. Thank you to everybody who's joining us. Oh, hi, Miriam. Miriam's in the chat. Good to see you. Yeah, so if you come here and you're here, leave us a chat box because we can't actually see that you're here unless you're in the chat. But we're grateful to have you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're talking today about outer planet transits and how those affected our marriage, and then how you might be able to use those in your, relationship with your kids, with your parents, with your spouse, with your partner, everything like that. Okay, so I want to say a few things here before we get going into the discussion of the outer planets themselves. I got my notes. I'm all ready. I'm Robin Poole. This is my husband, Steve Poole. Wave.
Hello. Yep.
Wave. There we go. We run the channel Spirit's Head Style, where we talk about astrology and relationships and healing and all kinds of interesting stuff for us. So I want to say that we started out the idea for this live saying that this is about how astrology's helped our relationship. It's helped us understand each other better. We have better communication as a result of our understanding of the outer planets. But I wanted to just say that astrology affects everybody. Oh, Richard Morgan's here. Hi, Richard. Good to see you.
RJ.
Our buddy
Nice to see you, RJ.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming. Which is to say that everybody is affected by astrology. Now, whether it's the planets affecting you or whether they're just markers of what's going to happen, astrology affects everybody. So whether or not your spouse, your partner, your kids believe in astrology, you can still use these analyses to understand who they are and what's going on with them. But there are a couple caveats for respect and also honesty, which is to say that astrology affects everybody a little bit differently. So you may be very strongly affected by some outer planet transit. That doesn't mean that your spouse or your kids is going to be affected as strongly as you are. Also, of course, their chart is different. They have this in a different place. Oh, Ollie's here. Hi, Ollie. Welcome. Thanks for the heart. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. So people are going to be affected by this differently. So the idea is that understanding the outer transits can help you, outer planet transits can help you figure out how to have a better relationship with your spouse or your partner, your kids. But don't go in thinking, well, I watched this YouTube live thing about Neptune and this is what they said, and now I totally understand my partner. Or, well, this is what I think Uranus is doing in my life. It must be doing the same thing in my partner's life or in my children's life.
You're supposed to learn about your spouse and your kids and your family over the entire life of your relationship. It's not a one time, it's not like, oh, I figured out algebra, so I passed the class and I'm moving on. No, this is a lifetime of listening and learning, and we're not looking for quick fixes here. What we're looking for is insight and wisdom.
Yeah. So what we're saying here is really like, this is a way that you can use astrology to take a guess at what's going on with you and maybe what might be going on with your spouse or your kids or your boss at work. But it's not like, it's like a diving board, right? To get you into the air, to get you thinking about possible causes for people's behavior. And it's not supposed to be prescriptive or limiting or forcing your perspective on anybody else. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to put them in the chat. How can you break that to people? Hi, Miriam. We see you again. Thank you for everybody who's here. Okay. The next thing I need to say is that this is tropical astrology. So when I say Pluto's moving into Aquarius or Uranus is moving into Gemini, this is the tropical system. If you have questions about tropical versus sidereal and you want to know why I use tropical or we use tropical, I did a live stream with Elizabeth V of The More Intuitive Me, and it's 2 hours on tropical versus sidereal. So there's lots of explanations for that. And, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Maybe we'll talk about those a little bit later. But this is tropical astrology when I say the planets are changing signs. Okay. And then the next thing I have to say is that our next live stream is 2 weeks from today, Sunday, May 11th, and it's about your brain on astrology. Why are people fascinated by astrology? What does it mean to be interested in astrology? How does that affect people differently? We're going to have a whole philosophical thing about humans and astrology, so you can sign up to get notified on that if you're interested. Okay, but let's dive into the outer planets. Do you want to say anything before I start with that, honey?
About the outer planets?
No, before I start talking about
or about the next live stream. Okay. I'll just say something to fill in the space.
Okay.
So I am personally serious about when I talk about that this is something that is part of your whole life, and it's not just a looking for quick fixes. I think a lot of people look for quick fixes. We can see that through fad diets or alternatives to medication, or I have a problem, I need something fixed. When you're thinking about relationships, your relationships are not problems that need to be fixed. Your relationships are things that enrich your life and that carry you through, kind of give you hope and purpose and give you community, things that we as human beings need to feel complete. This, if you know a lot about this topic, if you know a little about this topic, if you're somewhere in between, this really is a good place to jump in and start thinking about how can I apply this, not just this week, just now, take the pill, hope there's no side effects, but like this could be a new thing that my family does or my spouse partner does for the rest of our life until something else comes along that seems more appropriate at least.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, honey. Okay. So the reason we're talking about outer planets today is that this is sort of an unusual period in human history where the three outer planets, which are Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, they're called outer planets, by the way, because they're not visible with the naked eye. So people didn't really start to understand that they were there until the 1700s on up into the 1930s for Pluto. People can see planets through Saturn, and those are the traditional astrological planets, and the outer planets are new discoveries. And they are changing signs, all three of them, in a relatively short period. So people are theorizing that this is a major shift in sort of astrological energies. So what's happening is that Pluto is moving into Aquarius, and it already has, and it's going to be there till March of 2043. Uranus is moving into Gemini on July 7th of 2025. And Neptune has already moved into Aries. It went into Aries for the first time this last March, March 30th of 2025. And they're going to be in these new signs for a long time because they're so far away, their orbit is big. And so Pluto's in Aquarius till 2043, Uranus is in Gemini till 2032, Neptune's in Aries until 2038. And because the outer planets stay in a sign for such a long time, they sort of have time to work their effects or indicate their effects on us as humans for a long period. It's not just like, oh, I've got to deal with this energy for the next couple of weeks or even the next couple of years. So knowing where they're acting in your life can really help you chart the long-term transformation that you're going to experience and that your spouse, your children, your boss, and everybody can experience. So that's one big thing, is that all these energies are changing for us. The second is that Pluto going into Aquarius and Uranus going into Gemini are two air signs. Air signs are associated with ideas, communication, and the intellect.
This is particularly huge for me because Gemini is such a big placement in how I spend my day, kind of where I spend my thoughts, where I really feel comfortable. So this is going to be really interesting.
I know, right? And then Neptune going into Aries, Aries is a fire sign. So people are calling this, you might see on the internet, like the air and fire shift, because these planets are moving from earth signs or water signs into air and fire signs. So just on a big picture, we're looking for energy to be shifting from practical, which is earth sign, or emotional, which is water sign issues, into intellect and communication, which is air sign, and then sort of like passions and energy, which are fire signs. So it's almost like this water and earth thing was like the foundation, where we're looking at practical things, we're dealing with our emotions, and now we're going to be propelled forward into this energetic idea state. And these energies aren't just going on in our lives, by the way. So you can look for this in politics, you can look for this in world developments. And so that's a big thing, is to just be thinking, from a perspective of my communication, my ideas, what I'm passionate about, what sort of transformation am I looking for? Like, one of the rules of astrology is that the transformation happens whether you're aware of it or planning. But if you do plan and you are aware of it, you have a better chance to harness it and have it not take you so much by surprise. And that's a big way in which this has helped our marriage, by the way, is just knowing what we're looking for and how long it's going to last has really been huge for us. All right. You want to say anything about that, or should I move on?
No, let's jump into it.
We're good. Okay. All right. So the thing about this is that, okay. Richard, I see your question. We'll get there in a second. Richard's asking, sorry, we all call him RJ. I'll just call him RJ. RJ says, psychic mediums have talked about a vibrational shift in 2025, like going to a higher vibration. Is this caused by outer planets? So typically, people who are sensitive to energy will start getting these messages from different avenues. People debate on whether astrology is causal. So when you say, are the outer planets causing the energetic shift? The answer is we don't really know. Some people think that they do cause it. Other people think that they are indicators of an energetic shift. But we can definitely tell you that the outer planets will help you track the energetic shift that is coming up in your life and understand how it might affect you. Okay. So that was a great question. Thank you for asking that. Anybody else, if you've got questions, feel free to stick them in the chat.
And
really appreciate that.
Robin and I have specific examples to share just about how like Neptune and Pluto have actually kind of brought some shifts for ourselves.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we'll not only just talk about it, but we actually have some examples to point to that will help maybe make it easier to kind of see if this applies to you as well.
Yeah. So the first thing you do if you have a birth time is try to figure out what house these planets are going through. And I have a cheat sheet on my website at spiritsaid.com. There's a drop-down menu for resources. And if you're not sure how to identify that, you can take a look at your birth chart, take a look at the cheat sheet, or feel free to send us some sort of an email or a post, and we can help you out with that. So when we talk about the change that's happening, the first thing you want to do is figure out what the planet symbolizes. So Pluto, and I'm just going to make it very simple. Pluto is deep and inevitable transformation. Neptune is dreams, sort of like experimentation and lack of clarity. And then Uranus is like sudden and unexpected change. So those are the three themes that you're looking for. Pluto's deep transformation, Neptune is experimentation, fantasy, confusion, and then Uranus is unexpected and sudden change. And as we think about how that's affecting us as individuals, we then can look at the sign that they're going in and look for those planetary themes in that sign. So like, for example, Pluto was just going through Capricorn. So a lot of people experienced change around Capricorn style themes, like financial planning, the foundation of your life, your long-term, goals and things like that. So you combine the planetary energy with the energy of the sign. Okay, so let's think of a specific example. What is the example that you want to share about one of these planets and how it affected you?
Right, so we talked about how Pluto went through one of my important signs. Do you want to kind of set that up?
Right, okay. So here's the thing. Everybody has every sign in their chart. There are 12 signs and we all have all 12 of them. But some signs will affect you more strongly depending on where they are in your chart and whether you have planets in those signs. So Steve has this sign of Capricorn in his 6th and 7th house of work and relationships. So he has experienced with Pluto in Capricorn. Now Pluto's almost moved into Aquarius, but it was in Capricorn before that for like 15 years. I think it was 17 years. And he experienced a really deep transformation in this 6th and 7th house of his, it's the 8th house. I got that wrong. I'm visualizing his chart. In the 8th house of healing, and especially sort of his attitude towards, spirituality as a healing modality, and how he was able to sort of think about his long-term progress.
Right. So I have a long oftentimes challenging history with topics of spirituality, because in part I was raised in an environment and in a family that was deeply invested in a particular interpretation of what spiritual living was. And in many ways, that interpretation went counter to a lot of my own internal instincts, and more than anything, served to kind of minimize the things that were actually authentically me and importantly me. So my spirituality as a young person was very performative. It was very much for other people. And by the time I hit my midlife, it left me feeling very kind of empty, because like, what about me? What, not in a like, well, what about me kind of selfish way, but what about me in a, what have I actually accomplished with this spiritual path? What have I invested in, and how has it come back to me in terms of a richer, deeper, happier life? And so I took a break from spirituality. I took a long break. Starting in 2012 to about, I don't know, I want to say 2022, 2023, Robin began her journey with this around 2021, 2022. And in the beginning, I was very supportive of it, but I wasn't involved in it. And it really wasn't until we got to spending more time in Europe, or my chart shifted to kind of make this a little more accessible to me, that I really started to see the benefit. I saw how it was really helpful and healing for Robin. And that's what I really needed. I needed an example of someone who was healing from spirituality, not being harmed by spirituality. Yay. So it caused me to kind of lower my defenses. And I got curious about what she was doing, particularly astrology. I think there was something about astrology in particular that I find it intriguing. I also really enjoy tarot. Tarot is the card game, which is fun to play, but also it's kind of fascinating to make tarot predictions. And as we have combined this with our locational astrology and kind of merged all these three things together, our relationship has gotten better, and our relationship has gotten stronger, not just with us, but with our family. All the things that I felt I was raised to believe and hope for in my traditional spiritual path that I was not finding there, I was finding it here, and I kind of dig it.
Yeah. So that's one of the ways in which this outer planet transit stuff has really helped me, I'll just say, as a wife. I'm kind of the wife that wants to fix everything. I'm like worried about this. I see that Steve could grow in this way, or he needs to heal, or the negative energies have got some impact somewhere. And I'm kind of like, we have to fix that. We have to do something about it. We have to be better. And I want to like tell him what he should be doing. And so understanding
doesn't really work well.
No, it's not really a nice thing to do to anybody, really, and it's mostly me just being anxious.
And it doesn't work.
Right, exactly. And so it's helped me because once I understood that Pluto was going through his 8th house, I understood that this was a healing journey that he was having.
That I needed.
Yeah, and I stopped feeling like I had to rush it, because I stopped feeling like this has got to get fixed right away. And I'm like, you know what? I can trust that these energies are working. I can trust that they're unfolding in me. And in my own life, I had Pluto in Capricorn going through my 11th house of groups. And I was, at the beginning of this, I was a card-carrying member of a pretty traditional Christian church. And then I lost that. I've lost like 5 spiritual communities along the way. I've lost a bunch of relationships. The 11th house is the house of groups and friends. And my friendships are really different now. And a lot of you who are here listening to this and who have joined us tonight are my new group of friends who are way more supportive. I think my old group of friends wanted to be supportive, but because I felt like I had to be very Christian, I wasn't as honest with them. And so they didn't have a chance to really support me in an authentic way.
Although I would say that a few people, I'm not going to name names, but a few people here are from the old group.
That's right. Hello, those of you who are from the old group. We won't call you out. So So I was really sort of scared about this, and I was worried because I kept losing these spiritual communities, and there were a lot of friends who weren't my friends anymore, really. And and then I learned about this transit that Pluto was going through Capricorn, and there was be deep transformation, and you can't, sort of inexorable. You can't fight Pluto, really. And
That should be like a T-shirt.
right? I love that.
You can't fight Pluto,
That's
especially
good.
for the astronomer community. Nothing but total respect for those,
Right.
but who are like, it's not a planet.
Right.
Astrologically, it kicks butt.
Thank you, honey. Good for you. So yeah, so that helped me stop being so anxious. And then when I was less anxious, of course, that helped our marriage because then I wasn't so worried and Steve didn't have to be so anxious either. And I'm like, honey, this is the transformation that we're undergoing. We don't have to push it. And then the cool thing is now that I know that Pluto has kind of finished up in Capricorn, I'm like, okay, now we can move to the next house. So for example, Steve has started this healing journey in Capricorn. Pluto's now moving on to the next sign, which is Aquarius, which is his ninth house. And I'm like, okay, so this is the period where Steve's spirituality probably really gets going. And that's one of the interesting things about the philosophy of astrology is that because the planets generally go in zodiacal order, you can tell what house is coming first. Oh, Ollie says, I'd buy that t-shirt. Yeah, you can't fight Pluto.
So I want to just add this too.
Okay.
I don't think that. I mean, I don't know what's coming, honestly, when it hits the ninth house. I can only speculate. But I imagine that because I've had it go through the eighth first, I will be much better prepared to see it and put it into practice. I may not have been as open to it without going through the healing of the eighth, because I had so many kind of negative experiences with the version of spirituality that I was raised with. That I don't want to say that I put a restraining order on it on that version, but kind of metaphorically I have. So I needed to resolve that before I could embrace what's next.
Yeah. So, and I want to stop and take a moment to say hi to Chevy's. Sorry, Clevis. I misread that.
Text on phones is so small for people our
I know,
age to
we're on
read.
our
We're like, what is that?
And I'm sorry, please let me know if I've pronounced your name incorrectly. I want to make sure I get that right. But it's wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining. And anybody else who showed up, please feel free to say hi in the chat. We're here talking about how the outer planet transits have helped our marriage, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. So we're going to be talking a little bit about astrology philosophy going forward. My inner team is telling me I need to work on that and talk about that. And one of the cool things about it is that the idea that the houses build on each other. So whatever house Pluto went through in Capricorn, it's now switched to the next house in Aquarius if you use a whole sign house system, which is a simple way to look at it. So it's like Steve had to go through his healing journey in the eighth house so that then he would be ready to change his spiritual path or to embrace new information in the ninth house, which is about spirituality, learning, and travel. So whatever house Capricorn is in for you, that was the foundation then for Pluto moving into the ninth house. So
we love travel, so this is going to be great.
That's right. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, Pluto transformed my relationship with friendships and groups in the 11th house. And now in Aquarius, it's going to go into my 12th house, and it will be transforming my mental health and my feeling about who's my enemy and who's my not as a result of the 12th house. Yeah. Okay, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to let us know. I'm interested, if you want to put into the chat, what is an area that you have been transforming in for the last couple of years, maybe the last 15 years? And how do you feel like you have been experiencing this transformative energy? Okay, but for the two of us, can we go on to Neptune?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so Neptune has been a real doozy for us. So Neptune, as I said, is the planet of like confusion, experimentation, dreams, fantasy, lack of clarity. And it's really an example of like
Alice in Wonderland. Almost.
Yeah, you have all these ideas, and usually most of them don't come true, but a couple of them do, and they turn out to be super cool. So you have to sort of like sort through everything and be patient and not get your hopes up, but keep going so that you can then figure out what is really going to stick out of all of these fantasies or ideas that you've had. And can I go first on this one? I'm going to go first on this one. So what happened to me is that Neptune went right over my ascendant. And one of the things that affects people is if you have planets in these houses, then the transit in your natal chart, then it will probably affect you more. Or if you have any of these signs in your first, fourth, seventh, or 10th houses, so that's like the cross, right? The horizontal axis in your chart or the vertical axis in your chart, you have an extra big effect. Now, Neptune went through Pisces, and that is my first house. It went right over my ascendant. So I basically had lack of clarity, uncertainty about who I was. That's the first house, is your identity. What am I doing here? Why am I here? I lost my business. I lost my identity as a Christian. I had all these ideas about how I could be like a guru and a seer.
We lost our path.
Yeah.
I mean, we sold our house and we moved without having a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I asked in the chat if you know where you've been transforming, but another question you could ask yourself is, where have you been confused? Where have you had ideas, or where have you been experimenting? Because that's also a place where Neptune is visiting. Okay, RJ says, I left traditional spirituality and over the last 2 years got into meditation and spirit guides.
Wonderful.
Well, RJ, you're in the right place. Obviously,
It sounds very aspirational the way he puts it.
I know, right? RJ is awesome. Yeah, so I feel like for me that was sort of devastating in some sense, was having my identity melt away, and I realized how much stock I'd put into these identity markers of Christianity and being a business person and things like that. But I also, because I discovered astrology, I knew what was happening, and I knew that as soon as Neptune got out of Pisces, I would feel better because I would achieve clarity. So literally, no exaggeration, 5 years ago, I put March of 2025 on my calendar. And I said, this is when it's going to resolve, as soon as Neptune gets through with Pisces and gets into Aries.
And 2 years ago, in a very challenging period, actually, was it two? No, year and a half, something. Anyway, I don't want to get tangled up in how long, but when we were still in Dallas, right? And we hit a particularly rough period. Robin went through a particularly rough time, and we had some external experiences which contributed to that. Her spirit team reminded her that March of 2025 was going to be really great.
Right.
Like, not in the, like, you'll win the lottery great,
Right.
but like, you're going to be pleased and surprised by what comes.
Yeah. And
we certainly couldn't predict then what we've had this year. So
yeah. Right. So
this prediction has been lingering around for a while.
yeah. So when my spirit guide said this to me, I said, well, can I just fast forward to 2025? Because I don't like how this feels to
because
have
that's how it
identity,
works.
Right? And my spirit guide was like, do you really believe that like nothing of interest will happen for the next 2.5 years and you should just skip it? And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't sound very spiritual once you put it that way. All right. Okay. Ollie says, I've been wondering what I want to be when I grow up for the last few years. Fingers crossed things will change for me this year. Yeah, we totally support that. Ollie is one of my clients who works with me, and we're meeting regularly to help her sort of figure out what her path is, which is really great. And I just want to say, Ollie, you have made tremendous progress in the last couple of weeks. I am really proud of you for that. So I have confidence that things will change. But we have to look at where Neptune is in your chart and where it is in Aries, right? That's where it's heading next, because things will clear up in the Neptune house of your chart. And then the lack of clarity now is going to start in your Aries part of your chart. So like I have Aries in my second house. I'm expecting that between now and May of 2038, I will try a whole bunch of different money-making ideas. Second house is finances, personal resources. So I'm probably going to have ideas to sell that. I could be an author. I've got a subscription thing. Probably they won't all work out, but a few of them will. And it's just important not to get my heart set on any of these, because I know in advance, these aren't all like, it's trial balloons, right? These aren't all things that are going to be real. So that's another way this really helped our marriage, is that I stopped getting really upset when things didn't work out, because wherever Neptune is a place where not everything's going to work out.
And I would add too, that it's kind of my personal belief that life is not like winning and losing. There's a lot of talk about winners and losers and, accomplishing this or failing at that. I'm like, the people who win at the game of life are the ones who just experience it with an open mind and open heart. That's how you win the game. And, so like it's okay if Aries gets a little muddy. It just means things will be interesting.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Ollie says, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you guys. I am grateful to you. Ollie and I have been friends for, I don't know, it's like almost 30 years now. So I'm grateful that we're still hanging in there. Yeah, so that's part of, I think, what's important about Neptune is that it allows you to know where yourself, but also your spouse, your kids, your partner at work is likely to be disappointed. Where are they going to need support in your life as they try things out, and sometimes they work, but sometimes they don't? Where are they going to maybe need you to put on the brakes when they're super excited about the next great idea and you're like, okay, I totally support that, but let's not go all in on it until we do a little bit of exploration.
I'm going to change this a bit. We're getting kind of
glary.
Okay.
It's 8 p.m. here in York, so the sun is setting. We're losing our illumination. Yeah, so it's like, where is it that your spouse or your partner or your kids are going to need support to understand, as Steve said, that this isn't about achievement or having everything go right? And I'll just say this is part of the reason why I married Steve, because he has such a great attitude.
What if you don't have any Aries in your chart?
Excellent question. Okay, thank you, Miriam. We love questions. Miriam's another one of my clients.
It's definitely there, Miriam. Just maybe not the planets, but other things are there.
Okay, so we're just gonna have a two, right. Oh, I pronounced your name right, Clevis. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, any planets in Aries. Okay, thank you for clarifying. So one of the cool things about these transits is that it affects you in the life area so whatever house you have Aries in, Neptune will cause confusion and dreams and fantasies in those life areas, whether you have any planets or not. Okay, so the effect is typically stronger if you have planets, or if you have Aries in the angles, which is your first, fourth, seventh, or 10th houses. But it will affect you whether there are planets or not.
And also asteroids.
Well, that's the second thing.
Like Chiron is an asteroid, but it's your childhood pain.
Right. So is that it probably isn't true that you don't have anything in Aries just because you don't have planets. Because you probably have asteroids you don't know about, and you probably also have lots in that sign. And lots basically are, I don't want to be too technical, but you take the distance between two planets and then you move that same distance from your ascendant, and it causes like an energetic hotspot or an area of focus relating to the themes of the planets. So if you know about like the lot of fortune or the lot of spirit, there are hundreds of lots.
If the Islamicate okay, I can say this. Traditions say there's like lots for everything. There's probably lots for dentistry.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like, there's a lot of things there.
Yeah. So Miriam says, I have nothing in it. And I'm just going to say that probably isn't true. It's just probably that the way you've pulled up your chart, which is a standard way we pull them up on the internet, doesn't show any planets. But if we go through your chart, we'll find some lots in Aries, I guarantee it.
Also, the 10th house is interesting.
Right. Now, Miriam says she has Aries in her 10th house, which means that it's at the top of her chart and it symbolizes her career or her public face. So that means that this is probably an area where things are going to get a little muddy or unclear between now and May of 2038. So you may be like, I know what I'm doing. I know what my career is. I know what I have been doing for the last, 10 years. And then going forward, you may find that maybe it's not as clear as you thought, or maybe there's some part of your individuality. Now we're going to bring in the sign. So Neptune's going into Aries. Aries is a sign of individuality, of leadership, of personal energies, of ambition, of like leading from the front or leaping before you look. I had a client who had an Aries ascendant and she's like, oh yeah, I jump into the pool without even checking to see if there's water. People are impulsive. And you may find
Watch the Mars on that one.
I know, right? You may find that actually you're not quite as settled in your career as you thought you were, and maybe you're not satisfied with it, or maybe there are new opportunities, or maybe you have a chance to try out something new, and part of you wants to just go for it, and you're like, okay, this is maybe a good opportunity, but I got to really check this out.
Or someone might, like, someone, not saying you, but someone in your situation might be like, maybe it's time to go back to graduate school.
Yes, exactly. Or maybe I don't want to work for a company. Maybe I want to do this for a nonprofit.
Or start my own company.
Right. But the other thing is that your 10th house isn't just your career you get paid for, it's your public face in general. So maybe you keep the same career, but you start volunteering someplace new. So it's the idea that now there's going to be a new chance for you to express your individuality in this life area. Okay, I've only been in my career for 5 years and I just got promoted. Yeah, definitely done with grad school. Well, that may not be what you do.
You and me both.
Yeah.
It's grad school is best remembered in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, but you might do other public things. You might start a blog. You might start a YouTube channel. You might start a meetup group. You might do one of these, like, here I'm making a new contribution out in public. So yeah, that's how that works. Right. A lot of layoffs at work. Yeah. So anyway, but thank you for giving us that question, because that allows us to give a good example of predicting where this Neptune energy might hit you. Yep. So one of the things that was nice about the Neptune in Pisces transit was that I could tell Steve when it was going to be over, and he could support me, and then he stopped panicking because he knew what was going on. So that's another way this has helped our marriage, is that we know what's going on. We have a little bit of an idea of how long it should last. And we don't say things to each other like, maybe you're sick, or maybe we should change everything, or maybe you need medication, because we're able to predict the arc of what's happening instead. Okay. Oh, thank you, Miriam. Miriam says, thanks for your wisdom and knowledge, Robin and Steve. Well, we're grateful for you for coming and for asking questions. And Miriam also has lots of wisdom and knowledge herself.
Just outside of astrology,
Okay.
my other kind of two big hobbies in my life involve writing and role-playing games.
Yeah.
And I definitely think imagining real life as a role-playing game is a really good analogy for this, right? You have a plan. You might even have a team. You might even have a mission. But then there are the dice rolls. And Aries in the 10th is kind of that random dice roll. Mm-hmm. And maybe you get a really great critical success, or maybe you have a really great critical fail. But the important thing is that you keep playing.
There you go. That's a great way. To sum. Steve has a big intuition.
I have a really strong love-hate relationship with the dice rolling algorithm. On the platform that I play my RPG game on. It is not my friend.
Okay.
Anyway.
Can we move to Uranus?
Let's go to Uranus.
Okay, because this was really helpful. I mean, I think they've all been helpful, but Uranus was huge for me once I figured that out. Okay, and so Uranus is a planet of sudden and unexpected events, occurrences. Uranus rules lightning, like the thing you never thought would happen. Aspects of Mars to Uranus are often indicators of like accidents, like a car crash, or some like letter in the mail that you didn't expect. And it can be Miriam's heading off. Oh, there you go. So it can be a good thing, like you get a letter in the mail that you inherited money, or it can be a challenging thing. You get a letter from the IRS that your taxes got screwed up or whatever.
Robin, by the way, just quick side note, has done some very interesting deep dive looks into how this plays with Mars and people, famous people who have had unfortunate things happen to them. And there's some interesting things to learn from that.
Very true, right. So aside from things like car crashes and letters from the IRS, Uranus transits can also indicate where you end up with like life changes or events that you never would have imagined. So like, I never thought I was going to become a Christian. I definitely never thought I was going to become an astrologer. I never thought I was going to become nomadic. Like, I'm sort of the queen of things that are like, I never expected that. And so knowing what house Uranus is transiting through can help you see where you're going to have some unexpected stuff happen. So anybody want to put in the chat like a really unexpected thing that happened to you in the last, let's say 5 or 6 years? So for me, Uranus has been going through Taurus, and that is my third house of communication and spiritual like practice. I never thought I would be an astrologer. I never thought I would read runes. I never thought I would read tarot. And I have this weird tendency to reject things that I later decide are good, or completely abandon things that I am devoted to. So I did runes for a long time. I made a rune deck. I wrote a book about runes. And then and then I'm not even doing runes anymore now. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to remember all the runes. It's been a long time since I did runes. And I really criticized myself for that. I have sort of a lot of criticism in my past, and I was like, you're just inconsistent and you keep changing, and how are you going to build anything if you keep flipping around, and who are you anyway doing all this weird stuff? And honestly, I was just kind of harsh on myself. And then Steve had Uranus and Taurus going through his 12th house, and he also has Saturn and the moon, so that was a really big effect for him. So if you have planets in the houses, that is an extra big effect. And he's had all kinds of changes in his mental health, and he came out as non-binary, and part of me was like, what? Like, we've been married for 27 years. What is he doing? This is not the Steve that I married. This is not the person that I knew. And then I discovered this outer planet astrology, and I was like, nope, don't panic. Uranus is going through Taurus. It's going through Steve's 12th house. This is not a sign that he's lost his mind and he's Mr. Inconsistent. This is the place where sudden and unexpected things are going to happen. Mm-hmm. And it helped me be like so much more like chill and patient with what's going on with him. And also to understand that it's okay if I'm not consistent in this area. This is what the outer planet transits indicate.
Miriam moved to LA in 2022 and had a Kundalini awakening in 2023.
Right.
We actually spent 3 months in Los Angeles in 2023. The really rainy part.
Yeah.
In January.
Yeah.
December through February.
Yeah. So I'll just say a Kundalini awakening, which for those of you who don't understand, this is not a technical definition, but it's sort of like an explosion of spiritual energy that shoots through your body and often sort of resets your abilities or your senses. And Miriam, if you want to say something more specific about that, you're welcome to do so. But it is a classic example of a Uranus event where you're like, I am different today from how I was yesterday. This is not who I thought I was. How did this happen to me? What is going on? And so if you look at your chart and check out where you've had Taurus, that's where those things are going to be occurring, the sudden events, because Uranus is going through Taurus. And then you can be like, okay, well, maybe this isn't a cause to call 911 and go to the emergency room, or maybe this is something that's supposed to happen. Maybe this is something I have to get adjusted to. Maybe this is a place where the universe thought I needed a big shove all at once instead of like the sort of slow grinding transformation, which is typically what you get for like a Pluto transit, for example. So I think it can be really helpful to understand that and to sort of like just, take a couple deep breaths and ask, how is this working towards me? How is this working for me? And then ask the same question about your partner. Yep. You have anything you want to say about dealing with my sudden and unexpected changes?
I don't know. I honestly kind of think that what would be sudden and unexpected is if we don't have transformations for a while. I think that's been a consistent theme through our 27 years together as a couple.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I would do if suddenly everything got really quiet and predictable.
Yeah.
I kind of like our quirky journey.
Okay, so here's another way astrology, outer planet astrology has helped our marriage. Steve was not always like this. There were times at the beginning of this quirky journey. We were basically very settled for like 15 years in Charlotte, and things were pretty consistent for us. There have been times when he was not Mr. Chill and accepting, and I give him credit for having come a long way here. But I feel like the astrology, because it's helped us chart things, understand what we're doing, because it's helped us embrace our healing journey, that Steve has become a lot more chill as a result of that. And so that's another way in which it's really helped us.
And not just because I'm getting older and slowing down.
Okay.
No,
okay.
None of that.
So let's talk a little bit about aspects in your chart, because Steve is pointing out that actually sudden things happen to me all the time. I make these sort of hard right swerve or a hard left swerve. And I see we've got some new people here. Please leave a comment in the chat and let us know who you are and say hi to us. And if you have any questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear them. So in my chart, I have Uranus at 17 degrees of Libra, and I have Saturn at 20 Gemini. And that is pretty much a 120-degree angle. And that means Uranus is a really important planet for me because it has this 120-degree angle to Saturn, which is a big, strongly effective planet. So if these planets are extra prominent in your chart, so like you have Pluto right on your MC, or you have Uranus at a 120-degree angle with any planet in your chart, or you have Neptune as part of a stellium. So like I know somebody who has a Venus-Neptune conjunction. Venus is right next to Neptune, which means they have a lot of sort of fantasies and ideas about relationships that don't end up working out. If the planet is important in your chart, then the magnitude or the impact of the transiting planet may be elevated for you. So I have a Uranus kind of personality because it has this angle with Saturn. So Uranus transits affect me very strongly. And the same thing, interestingly, is also true of Pluto and Neptune. I'm one of these people who's very strongly affected by astrology, which is why I ended up becoming an astrologer. So I'd be interested if there's anybody here who wants to put something in the chat. Do you feel like these planetary events are really strong for you? Like sudden things happen to you all the time? Or maybe Plutonian, you're like this deep person drawn to like dramatic changes or or death or underworld gods. Or Neptune, you're very spiritual, you have your head in the clouds, you constantly hear messages, you're a very dreamy person. Because if any of those planets is really important for you, then this outer planet astrology could be really big. And I mentioned that because you sometimes hear people say that the outer planets are not very important because they're like the same for everybody or they move very slowly. And I'll just say that in our case, I don't think that is true.
It is definitely not true.
Yeah. And the reason is even if they move slowly and even if they're similar for many people, the angles that they make to the personal planets that move a lot faster can be quite different for people. And so I think they have a big impact on your chart, even if they're not terribly different for everybody born over a period. I don't know if that's clear. If it's not, feel free to leave me a question in the chat. I'll explain it more deeply. So yeah, all right. I was thinking I might move on to just some ideas about what we might be looking for next. What do I think Steve and I are experiencing next and what you might be experiencing?
That's a great idea.
Yeah? Okay. Thank you, sweetie. Okay. Ollie says, no sudden things happening to me, pretty steady for me in the last few years. Okay. So you may be somebody where Uranus is not terribly effective for you in general, or maybe Taurus is kind of a really stable sign for you. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Ollie might have some placements in Gemini, which means Uranus and Gemini might be a little bit more of a big deal for you.
It could be coming.
I know, all right. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Yeah. I mean, okay, so there's another thing, by the way, that this has helped. Our astrology has helped our marriage. I've had sort of like persistent feelings of not wanting to be on the planet. And that's a big story, which I won't get into now. But I love that astrology gives me something to look forward to. Yeah, right? Ollie's like, yay! I'm like, well, who knows? Now I'm interested, right? Ollie's one of my clients, and I'm like, ooh, she has a bunch of Gemini placements. What's going to happen with Uranus and Gemini? And I love that there's this sense of anticipation coming forward.
And Gemini is one of the fun planets. Yeah. It's just everything is interesting. Everything is worth talking about. Everything is worth experiencing, depending on the strength of the Gemini. Mine's pretty strong. It's really close to my ascendant in my first house. So, and possibly could be actually my first house. I feel fortunate that Gemini is has such a big place in my chart. It really lines up well with kind of what I hope my chart would have. I've had a lot of boring jobs in my life because I thought I was raised to believe that, making money was more important than being fulfilled emotionally. I'm just grateful that my charts are not, yay accounting, yay banking, You know, no, yay Gemini, because it's like all the fun topics are Gemini topics.
All right, cool. This is another way astrology has helped our marriage, which is that I think that both of us are less self-critical and have a greater appreciation of who we are as a result of understanding our astrology charts. We're more able to say, I like this about myself. I stopped blaming Steve for things, and I think I appreciate him more now that I understand his astrology chart. So that's not really about the outer planets, but it's a plug for relationship astrology, in general. Yeah. Okay. So when we're
Synastry charts,
right? So we're thinking about what's coming next, right? So anyway, so Uranus has been in Taurus, and now it is moving into Gemini on July 7th, 2025. There's a little retrograde period, so it moves into Gemini, then it swings back out again, and then it comes back into Gemini for good and sometime in 2026, and it will be there until August of 2032. So that's a 7-year period or something.
I get a long time with it.
Well, you do. But the Gemini transit is going to be big for both of us because Gemini is Steve's first house. So when I said that my identity was like Neptunized, right, where it sort of dissolved into this fantasy and confusion, Steve's identity is going to be Uranized, where it's going to be like sudden shifts, sudden communication. The other day, Steve came out as non-binary and he was talking about his identity.
That was almost a year ago.
I know, but I always say the other day because I'm so bad at keeping track of time. Okay, so he came out as non-binary, and I'm like, I totally support this, honey, but there's probably going to be more. There's going to be more coming up because Uranus is going over your first house, and there's probably more stuff that's going to be coming out about you.
I blame being in England, of course, because, my Venus, which hides in my 12th, hides deeply in my 12th, in my natal time zone, pops right out into a very public place here in England.
Well, and Uranus is going to be going right over your Venus. So Steve has his Venus at 1 degree Gemini, and early on in the Uranus transit, so probably, maybe August or September of this year, Uranus is going right over Steve's Venus. Who knows what Steve is going to want to communicate about his relationship status, about art, about Venusian themes. He's going to decide he wants to be a chef.
No.
He's going to decide he wants to have
Not
parties.
that.
No. Okay.
It's like, I like cooking shows. I like cooking. I like this. This is another hobby of mine. And I feel like having to have that be your job would just steal all the fun out of that. So probably not that.
Yeah. But the point I'm making is that as a wife, I am preparing myself for sudden and unexpected shifts in Steve's communication and in his identity. And that's really helpful. For me in our marriage, right? I'm not going to hold him to being consistent. If he changes his mind, I'm going to be like, oh, I totally expected you to change your mind.
You didn't really think I was going to aim to be a circus juggler.
No, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. Not at all. And then for me, actually, Miriam says, okay, she's back. Thank you, Miriam, for coming back. So for me, Gemini is in my 4th house of home and family. So I'm expecting some big changes in communication with my family in the next 7 years. Now, I don't know what that is going to be. Like, does that mean that, there's a health problem with my parents? Does that mean that my relationship with them changes?
I feel like this has been happening already, though. We had a 2-week period where a week ago we went back to the States, to the DC area to spend time with her family because her parents had a joint 80th, even though it's not their 80th birthday. They had a joint 80th birthday celebration a week ago in DC. And when we came back, they came back here with us because they wanted to see what was going on in New York.
Right.
And we've had some amazing conversations with them, even today, as tomorrow they head back home.
Yeah.
So
you're making a really interesting point. And as always, I love the fact that Steve does this with me, which, by the way, took him 2.5 years to get on board, but he finally did. So be patient with your spouses.
Because I have this 2.5 year thing.
Right. We'll get to that. Right. So Jupiter has been going through Gemini. Now, Jupiter is about expansion. So since Uranus hasn't gotten to Gemini yet, I would say that the expanded conversations we've been having with my parents are Jupiterian in origin, which is to say that we're expanding our communication, we're talking about topics, but it's not exactly like unexpected or sudden topics. So like I've developed this new technique where I'm understanding the conception chart, which is the chart of the moment where the embryo takes hold and begins to develop its characteristics. This is an ancient technique. I just learned about it. If you're one of my clients and you want me to do this for you, let me know because it's really cool. And it tells you something about the pregnancy and then sort of the gestation of the baby. And so I thought to myself, well, now that I've done this for myself, I should talk to my mom and get some more details about her pregnancy with me and were there any problems and what happened. And that is not, I would say, a Uranus in Gemini, because it's not exactly unexpected to be talking with your mom about like her pregnancy with you, right? That's like a normal thing that people talk to their moms about is what was I like as a kid? What was it like being pregnant? So that's more likely to be Jupiter in Gemini because you're just expanding the relationship that's already there. So,
But, it prepares the ground, sort of in the same way that, Pluto in my eighth is preparing me for my Pluto in the ninth. This Jupiter in Gemini is preparing us for positive interactions when Neptune comes.
yeah, when
Instead of scary
Uranus comes.
Uranus comes instead of scary negative ones.
Okay. Another reason I love Steve, amazing insight. It's really cool to be an astrologer and have a husband who's gotten the hang of this because he says such amazing things. So this is exactly a great point. And this is part of what is really cool about astrology is that when you start mapping how the transits go, you can see how the energy is preparing the way for something positive. And I think this is really important because we're surrounded by sort of like, naysayer problems. This isn't good. It's really bad. The world is coming to an end. Politics are horrible. But astrology shows you, right? Astrology shows you how the energies are progressing. So Jupiter's been going through Gemini and expanding our communication ideas. And then now Uranus was going to come through Gemini, and maybe some of these sudden things, maybe we'll be more receptive. Maybe it won't seem so jarring. Maybe we'll be like, well, that isn't exactly what I expected, but my communication has just been expanded. Maybe I could be open-minded. Maybe I could sort of like ride out this wave rather than just resisting or getting stiff or
find new opportunities that you didn't expect to deepen and improve.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really good point. Jupiter, by the way, is moving into Cancer for the next few years where it's exalted. And so we're going to have an expansion of sort of like emotions, nurturing, caretaking. All is not lost. I know this is a really hard period in American history, especially, but also in world history. But there are some positive energies coming up that I think are really going to help.
It will help. Maybe it's like, maybe the systems that are outside of us may be troubled, but this is a good opportunity for us to strengthen the internal systems with ourselves and with the people right immediately around us. It might be a bad time in Washington, but it might be a really great time for you wherever you are.
Right, exactly.
Hopefully not
Yeah.
next to the trouble spot in Washington.
Yeah. And in general, I will say, so Miriam says, my Jupiter is in Cancer in the 12th house. So that means Miriam's probably experiencing expanded nurturing or self-care because the 12th house is the house of mental health. And so if you have Venus or Jupiter in any of these signs, right? So Pluto's going into Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, Neptune in Aries. If you have Jupiter or Venus in any of those signs, probably that's going to be an extra good transit for you. It's going over one of the positive planets. Really good things will happen. Similarly, if you have Mars or Saturn in any of those signs, Aquarius, Gemini, or Aries, this is probably going to be a little bit of a tough time. And I'm looking forward to that myself because I have Saturn in the sign of Gemini. And so I'm imagining that as much as I think I'll have some great conversations with my parents, there might be some hard things, there might be some health problems, there might be some limitations that we have to work through. Saturn is a planet of limitations. So whatever planet you have in those signs, that indicates some idea of what you might be experiencing from this transit just beyond Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And then the other thing is that many people believe that what happens in the first maybe couple of weeks or month of the transit sets the tone for the next period of time. So, like, Uranus is going to be in Gemini for something like 7 years, from July 7th, 2025 to August of 2032. But those first few weeks in July, keep your eye open for sudden or unexpected things in your life, because some people think that those very early period is sort of like an indicator of what the whole transit will be like. I will be honest and say I don't have quite enough experience with that to know if it's true, but I think it's going to be something for us to all keep our eye on. Yeah, so anyway, okay, Pluto in Aquarius, deep transformation around making ideas into reality and making progress in your life. Uranus in Gemini, sudden and unexpected communication or information coming in. Neptune in Aries, dreams, fantasy, or ideas around your identity or your individuality, some of which come true and some of which don't. That's my prediction for what people are going to experience. And then figure out what house that is in your chart and add in those house themes. You want to say anything else, honey?
I think we've had a really good talk.
How has this helped our marriage?
Well, I think understanding each other, because we have kind of these interesting charts and these interesting internal worlds. In the beginning, it was very confusing. Me for you and you for me. And I feel like we're so much more in sync. We have so much more understanding. We have common language. And we have it's easier for us to see how it's healing and helpful.
Yeah.
And that really gets rid of things like fear and doubt and anxiety, which are really just so harmful in relationships.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Great. Yep. Okay, so Miriam's asking, what about the Saturn conjunct Neptune during this time, if it relates to this topic? Okay, I think we can take just a couple minutes and talk about that. I don't want to go over too much longer, right? So Saturn is coming up with a Neptune conjunction. I don't know exactly when that is, but it's coming up pretty soon. Neptune's at the very beginning of Aries, and Saturn's going to come right over that. So there are a couple things to think about. The first thing we always think about is combining the two planetary energies. Neptune is fantasy, dreams, messages from the universe, spirituality. It's also related to some less savory things like drug addiction, pop culture.
But we're not going to give
imagination, right? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, and then Saturn is a planet of limitation. So for the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I'm looking for some fantasy, imagine, dreams, or fantasy, imagination, or dreams to be limited. Like something you hoped for turns out not to be true. Something you had a vision for doesn't really work out. It's sort of a time to cut away things where you're like, well, actually, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to.
Or something that bothered you, something that troubled you, make it easier for you to let go of.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You might have people or somebody around you who is like raining on your parade. Oh, sorry. Miriam says I have this conjunction in my chart. Yeah, well, there's one happening pretty soon. I thought you were talking about the upcoming one. Yeah, so if you have this conjunction in your chart, then you probably understand what these energies feel like, where you have great ideas and then there's some limitation, which could be a limitation because it doesn't actually work out, or it could be other people are limiting you and telling you that it won't work, but then if you persevere, it continues to. And then this is happening, the upcoming one's happening in Aries, which means it's about individuality and identity. Yes, people raining on your parade. That's a great way to put it. So if you have some sort of cherished part of yourself or cherished aspects of your individuality, with this conjunction, there may be some limitation either in your circumstances or in your life or even in yourself that is asking you to give up this part of you. And then you're going to have to figure out, do I need to give it up? Do I need to just adjust how I think about it and maybe think about it a little bit differently? Or is this total BS and actually I need to push back against this and continue to insist on my individuality and who I am?
Really just kind of thinking about whether or not it's serving your highest good.
Yeah.
That's always a good test.
And then it's happening at the very beginning of Aries. And so if you have any planets in your chart at like 29 degrees to like 2 degrees of any sign, it's going to be aspected by this conjunction. I have my Pluto at 1 degree Aries. So this Saturn conjunct Neptune it's at Pluto is 1 degree Libra, is exactly opposed to my natal Pluto. So I think I'm probably going to have to give up some cherished ideas about who I am. I'm expecting that in my own chart. It's probably what's going to happen. Okay.
But it'll only be for the good.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you want help with that with your chart, feel free to contact me and we can take a look at what that might mean for you, Miriam. And I have an appointment tomorrow, actually. So we'll be talking about that. Yeah. Okay, so I want to say thank you to everybody who's been here. Thank you for your comments and your questions. Thank you for anybody who's watching this live. If you're not subscribed to the channel, you can already do that. I do have a Patreon at Spirit Said. Maybe you can put the Patreon link in the chat if we can find it. And I just want to say we're doing this again on Sunday, May 11th. I think it might be at 3 p.m. Eastern time, but we might try it a little bit earlier, so you can check back for that. And we're going to be talking about your brain on astrology. How does astrology affect the human psyche? Why are we interested in astrology? How can we use it for our good? And how can we go wrong with it sometimes? Like, what do we need to avoid? Why do people care about the stars? And how do we make that work for ourselves? Ollie says, I love you guys. Please say hi to your parents. I totally will. Ollie went to dinner with my parents like 30 years ago. A long time. They'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you, RJ. It was really wonderful. Thank you, Miriam. This says this was so informative. We're grateful to everybody who stopped by, and fingers crossed we will see you on the flip side. I do have an email list, by the way, at spiritsaid.com. And if you sign up for that, you can see my whole email sequence where I talk about what we're going to be working on. Okay, Miriam says, I've never learned as much about astrology from anyone as I have from you. Thank you. I have all these negative energies that tell me I should stop and it's not worthwhile. So your encouragement means a ton to us. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. We'll see you later.
Have a great week. See you in 2 weeks.
Yep, thank you so much. Okay, here we go.